think what this means to me, though, currently, is that first of all, I'm very appreciative that I was thought enough about to be considered. And I also feel like I'm very appreciative that a group of people thought enough of me to, co-sign on this award. You don't always do things for the approval of others, but it does make you feel good when people do say, "Hey, good job." The expectations were high, and I just feel like I was so fortunate to be around great coaches, and great men.
We're back with One More Down. Today we have a special edition with our co-creator, Dallas Saunders, who has been tabbed to be inducted into the Ursuline High School Hall of Fame for football and baseball this upcoming spring here. So we're going to get into a segment about his experience and his thoughts on being selected for this honor. and what the sentiment means to him and how he feels about having his name etched in a long line of great players to come out of that school on the north side, Ursuline High School.
Yeah, this is a little different, Ron. I usually not talking about myself here, so I appreciate you prompting this, and me, it's a little awkward, not my favorite thing to do, but I will tell you that going through this process and getting notified really makes you reflect on a lot of things, and it doesn't change what it was, but it makes you reflect and just for me be appreciative of the good people, the good men, the good educators, the teammates that I was able to be around. That's really I think the biggest experience so far that I've had from this. So, I'm excited about it. It happens in about 3 weeks, so it really hasn't sunk in, so to speak. But I'm definitely looking forward to it and definitely appreciative of it.
I think it's fitting because when you and I were kicking around ideas to create this show, I think we wanted to capture that feeling of, what it is to be a young man, chase after your dream and pursue athletics, whether it be football, baseball, or basketball, and then to realize those dreams, but not only realize those dreams, but have the maturity at this point in our lives to reflect back and see the impact that those things had on us and how they shape us in our daily lives on an everyday basis, whether that be through work, being a husband, being a father, or just, handling yourself as a man. So I'd like to kind of just get right into the meat of it and, kind of go back to your experience as a player, playing for Coach Dick Engle, 94 and 95. You had a shortened, injury-prone senior season, but you displayed enough grit and enough talent to be selected as a first-team All SVC player as a junior. When you go back to your beginnings at Ursuline, what are the things that stand out to you most just about the school and the process, as you attended there? What are those things that jump out for you as the key themes to that Ursuline family?
I just think, I think first and foremost, there was always that level of allure to Ursuline, whether you loved or hated Ursuline, right? There was that the aura around it. And I mean that because, right, you have Moonies, you have people on the west side, right? Your competitors are always there's a level of ire with your competitors, and so I'm not saying that I felt that way, but coming into it, there was that expectation of, this is the highest level of competition, right? It's not only Ursuline, but you're playing in the Steel Valley Conference, which at that point in time was one of the premier leagues collectively in Northeastern Ohio. And I don't know remember the landscape of the statewide, but I mean, we could pair up with anybody, people in those leagues. So I think there was just that level of expectation. And just to be quite honest with you, for me, it's there's always been that level of insecurity of, like, in my own mind, I felt like I knew I could do it, but there's always that doubt, right? And to be honest with you, I think that's what pushed me. That's always what made me better. Because it was never a thing where, hey, I've arrived. It was always, I need to get better. And then you're surrounded by great athletically, you're surrounded by great coaches who never let you feel that way, right? And then you're surrounded by great players who never let you feel that way. Um, when you talk about, you've coached, I've coached, and the worst thing you can do is have a starter and nobody back behind him to push him. And that was never the case. So there was just a lot of expectation, kind of the surrealness of, I grew up 4 blocks from Ursuline, so I'd walk down there during double sessions and watch them practice and be there, but never the thought that maybe, hey, I might be here someday, and I might be playing here someday. So it was really just kind of a surreal thing. Did not have intention to go to Ursuline necessarily. My sister graduated from the Rayan High School in 1992, I believe. So it was kind of up in the air where I was going to go. I ended up going in middle school to St. Anthony's, and my path led me there. So I just think the expectation of being on what I think was perceived the biggest stage of football, baseball at that point in time, collectively as a group.
In 2 years plus of doing this, we've had the good fortune of, talking to some of those personalities that were connected to that school, John Carter, Jabari Teague, Sean Penny, Felix Cataline, and Mike Eccles as well. There's countless guys that, just pop right to your mind, whether it be Al McGuire, Coach Kopp, Diallo Anderson, Clinton Lynch, Tim Terrell, Jason Williams, just a tremendous amount of individuals that, year after year just kind of make their place known in not only football, other sports, baseball, basketball, wrestling, what have you. For yourself, do you feel like you got the full balanced experience from the academic side, athletic side, social side, as you look back at your time there?
I think if I could reflect back, I think that from the academic side, no. I think that my freshman and sophomore year, academics was just kind of a ancillary thing, right, on the outline. And my GPA was not great, and I started to have some success athletically, and it came to a point where, if you remember back then, you had the sliding scale on ACT and GPA, right? I started to have some success, and I looked at my GPA. I looked at, hadn't taken the ACT yet, but I looked at what I would have to get to be able to go to college. And so it really was an eye-opening experience for me. So, for the next 2 years, I worked really hard to get that on track, which ironically, and my mother would always say, like, I'm shocked that you went into education because of the difficult time I gave her as a student, particularly once I got to high school, right? I was always a very good student in elementary, but then other things come into play. So then I've spent the last 25 years in education but I think it's that moment when you realize what's important, and that it all meshes, right? You can't necessarily have one without the other, that, it starts to click. And by having that moment at Ursuline, right, and having people that invest in you to get you on track, that sticks. And that has definitely stuck, through my college career, academically, into my professional career, always trying to improve, always trying to be better, which is what it was as an athlete, right? Now, you can appreciate the good things, you can appreciate the successes, but that's okay. You'll recognize this statement, right? Swish it in your mouth, enjoy it, and then get back to work tomorrow, right? That's but that's true. So, from the academic side, I think it prepared me for when I went to college, absolutely, and it opened my eyes to what I needed to do when it really mattered, and it started to count towards my professional career. Socially, it was tough. It was an adjustment. Personally, not because of anybody or anything else, but just for me and my experiences growing up. The fact is, I did not grow up wealthy. I did not grow up blue collar. I grew up pretty rough. And I did have a great family, just finances was not part of it. So, you transition to an environment where there are people who are fundamentally different from you in that aspect. And how do you navigate that? Right. I mean, that was a thing. That was a thing for me. And I remember this. I don't know how I thought of this at, 14. I remember sitting in a religion class, and I was sitting next to Alice Cafaro, who is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet, right? Just a fantastic person. And I'm sitting next to her, I'm thinking, what do we have in common? You own the mall. I go to the mall. And so, but that was kind of the reality of, how do you figure this whole thing out? And I do feel like that was probably one of the things that helped me in life, is how do you find that common ground that people that maybe you don't know that you have a connection with, and then you have to find it. And I think that has really helped me in my career of, understanding we may not be the same, but there's something similar that we can connect with. And you have to find that. So that was, that was an adjustment. And certainly you navigate it. And I think football and baseball really helped from that, because, at the end of the day, if you can play, you can play. And, that tends to equal everything out. That's the great equalizer on the field of competition. And athletically, it's very similar. The expectations were high, and I just feel like I was so fortunate to be around great coaches, and great men that were teaching you the right things. And I think that's why it was such an easy transition for me to go coach at Cheney, was because as much as the people at Cheney would say, not agree to this, and I've had this conversation with them, it's mirror programs, right? The pillars are the same. How you go about it, the vernacular, the different things, it's a little bit different, but the core principles, are the same, right? Outwork, out tough, outplay, out execute. And that was, I think, what made that transition into coaching so easy, because it was so similar, and the values were exactly on point.
At this juncture, you've been out of school for a couple decades plus.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the position that you find yourself in daily, leading people and managing an organization, when you reflect back to, your 15, 16, 17-year-old self, does that version of Dallas Saunders see today's version of Dallas Saunders? If you're looking back, and then, when you think about where you are in life, what it took to get there, and then, getting um, surprised by being inducted into this Hall of Fame. Uh, does that foundation that Ursuline provided, your family provided, and then the things that you went through post high school, post college, tie back to your time there as a student and as a player?
Does the 17, 18-year-old Dallas Saunders see today? No, absolutely not. I think um, I think anybody who's good at something and really trying to achieve it, and this comes at a cost when I say this, is singular, right? It's tunnel vision. And I just always felt like, I'm gonna go to college to play baseball. Uh, football was never my ultimate goal, but then I like, well, I think I'm pretty good and I might have an opportunity. So the door opens, right? But the love was baseball. Um, so, it was singular. I mean, it was, and that's the reason that, my first 2 years in high school were probably not the best academically because it wasn't a good balance, right? I'm here because this is the next step I have to take to get to where I want to be. Um, and oh, by the way, the academics are kind of tough, but I'm just gonna try and get through. Um, so there's consequences to that. I never, I never set out to become a superintendent. Like that was not the goal. Um, I wanted to teach and coach, and then things change, right? You get a little older, you see things changing around you, and so goals change. So then you become a principal, and you find out like, okay, I'm doing a pretty good job with that, and you get another job, and you're doing a pretty good job with that, and an opportunity arises, and here you are. So it's obviously there was thought there to do it, but it wasn't, hey, here's my next 5 steps. Um, I feel like, I don't know. My experience has been anybody who says they're a completely self-made man or woman it's not necessarily accurate. I've had a lot of people give me opportunities, and then I have made the most of those, right? And so it's not, and I'm saying that very humbly, right? There's a lot of things that go into people's success, and there's a lot of other people that go into success. So, and I'll tell you, the when I had the injury my senior year, um, that really changed, right? That took a real toll. At that point, then I just became trying to keep my head above water, right? Just mentally, because here you are, you have these goals. This is what you've been working for the last. I mean, I remember going out and blocking pitches in the yard with my dad when I was 9 years old. Like, so since I can remember, this is my goal, and now it's potentially gone. So that's a big thing to navigate. When I see kids get hurt and the things they're going through, um, sometimes it's like, oh, it's okay, but depending on where they're at with things, I mean, that's a devastating thing to um, process. And that really changed. um it makes you appreciate things a little bit more. It makes you realize that you know, things aren't always guaranteed, right? And I think that was probably the moment where I felt like my faith started to really take more of a deep hold, because, hey, you can have these goals and you can work as hard as you can, and sometimes things don't work out, and there has to be something more that you're invested in and leaning on than just the outcomes. So I think that was a very um, you know, key point for me from that standpoint. Definitely was.
I asked that loaded question intentionally because, obviously to be where you are at in your life now, in terms of your position and your standing and your experience, it all comes from some type of foundational work ethic that you've developed from that time to this time. Your time at Ursuline, you're coming into a program that's had great names. You're coming into a system that's been in place. There's winning there. There's a expectation there. There's a level of commitment that you have to have. And then there's ultimately an opportunity to prove that you belong. So, as you are making your way up through Dick Engel's regime, how do you develop into being a player that is worthy of an honor of being inducted into the class of 2025 Hall of Fame? I think, sometimes when we look at ourselves from our own perspective, we're our worst critic. And, sometimes we don't think we deserve the accolades that we get. And then sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we've done. Obviously we can't go back and change things. You can only live what was. But, as we transition into this talk about, Ursuline football from the perspective of Dallas Saunders, it's through the lens of a program. It's through the lens of someone pushing you. It's through the lens of making your parents proud. It's through the lens of you testing yourselves against your peers. So, as we go back to, 1992, when you enter into the school and you're finding your way through this football program, can you take me through that, up through your memories of being a teammate, what your seasons were like, and then how you feel you ended up in this position to be tapped for this honor this spring?
So, you talk about work ethic, right? And I think that I think that was completely instilled from my family, right? I had a great father, great mother, great grandparents. My dad was a phenomenal baseball player. Had a short opportunity to play in the minor leagues, and anybody around during his time, knew his name, and and I think that ironically, a knee injury ended his career back before they had successful knee surgeries. But I also think that if he was here today, he would say it. He lived vicariously through me, specifically for baseball, right? Like all the things that he didn't accomplish. But in fairness, I think he saw that I had talent, right? And so it's not like you're putting that burden on somebody who doesn't have talent. It was more of a burden to get the most out of your talent. And I still, that is burned into my being today. So, and and my sister will still tell me, like, I felt so bad for you. And I don't feel that anything he's ever said was untrue. It was just very clearly stated how he felt. but it was probably things that need to be stated. If you want to reach a level that you want to get to, here's what you need to know. Right. And I do think that's fair. It does put a strain on a relationship at sometimes. But it is what it is, right? Here's the goal. What price are you willing to pay for it? And it was not like that all the time. So I don't want to paint that picture. But that was an aspect. Then you fast forward going to Ursuline to play in those athletic arenas, and you have similar individuals, right? There's no quarter. There is no quarter. You're going to do the job or you're not, or somebody else is going to take it to you. And it's not that bluntly stated, but that's what it is. Right. So when you talk about expectation, the expectation at Ursuline is to compete for a Steel Valley championship and to be in the playoffs and make a run. The expectation as an offensive lineman is to take control of the offensive line and have your tailback run, 25 to 35 times a game and dominate. That's the expectation. Defensively, same thing, right? It's a bloodbath in the front, and you have to win it. And I think that having great men that know how to communicate that to you in a coachable way that allows you to get better is the key to all that, right? And obviously there's skill, right? There's skill. But I will think I do want to say this. I was thinking about this. So you talked about my entrance into Ursuline. So, and you talked about what it takes to have a Hall of Fame career, something along those lines. So my freshman year, I had the opportunity, freshman year in baseball, I had the opportunity. Let me start freshman year in football. So you played at Cheney and you played for Mike Popio, right? In the defense that we all ran back at that point in time, the one thing that a defensive tackle could never do, right? It was the cardinal sin, was to get trapped, right? Like that was the play that you had to know. And DBs, they say, right, if you bust a coverage, the wrong band's playing, right? As a defensive tackle, you don't think of too many dive type plays or trap plays you could give up, but that's the one that if it catches the seam, it's over, right? And so we're playing Boardman my freshman year. They're really good. We're really good. And that was the first time that I learned about trap, when I was playing defensive tackle. And I didn't learn it by a good lesson. I must have got trapped 10 times. Guard blocks down, tackle blocks out. I see the fullback getting the ball. I'm like, oh, thank God, easy tackle. And then just wham, you get cornholed. And then my first baseball experience was I had the opportunity to play varsity as a freshman. Periodically, he'd bring me up. Coach Matt Giambattista, he'd bring me up. And, I'd get some starts on doubleheaders, get some at-bats, and I was doing really well, you know what I mean? But I was still a freshman, right? I was just learning. I was too dumb to be scared, and I wasn't, and, I was doing all right. And so our starting catcher, who was a really good catcher, I can't remember what happened. He did something. He didn't come to practice. He showed up late. I don't know, but he had pissed off Coach G, and he was like, "Hey, Dallas, you're starting." And, I was like, all right, man, let's go. And it was against Fitch at Pemberton. And that day, I think Fitch, well, we had a pitcher on the mound who was off-speed pitcher, so he wasn't throwing real hard. And I had a freshman arm, and I think Fitch broke the SVC record for stolen bases that day. So, so, I think that everybody feels like it's always up and to the right. And my point with both of those stories is, I had coaches who saw something in me and kept coaching me. Right? They kept getting me better. They kept coaching me up. They kept getting after me. And for me personally, like, I remember this. I remember saying to myself, like, in both of those situations, I will do whatever it takes. I will never let that happen to me again. Never. And I think it's 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 having coaches like that. It's having a mentality like that, and it's the continued work to get to that point. And there's definitely some luck involved with it, right? There's um staying healthy, being in the right situation. I mean, it's a lot of things have to fall into place. But I think about those two moments, because if I didn't have somebody in my ear at home saying, "Hey, you got to get better. Here's how we'll attack it. Here's how we'll work on it," and you didn't have coaches at school coaching you up to do that, that's an easy way to check out. Um, so I don't know what makes a Hall of Fame career, but I know for me, it's the good and the bad.
When you think back to those moments in '94, that's the season you're tabbed for first team All SVC. Can you take me through some of the personalities of your team and the moments that you guys went through that helped you get to this level of being selected as an inductee and representing for that time period of your life, and for those other guys that were out there with you that may never get chosen? If you could be the representative for the mentality and the makeup and the grit of that group of guys, how would you characterize that and lay it out?
I think so. '93, which would have been my sophomore year, that was a really, really good football team, and we made it to the regional finals. Lost to Wasion, who ended up being the state champions that year, and we lost by a field goal up at Baldwin Wallace. That was a great football team, and Trevor Stargell, and I hate saying names because I don't want to forget any, right? But you had Trevor Stargell, Jerry Howe, Vinnie Burton. There was a tailback that, and he was such a good guy too. I mean, he would give me the time of day, and he didn't need to. Rashad Chambers, right? He ended up getting hurt. He was Northside guy. That offensive line was great. Mike Frasco, Blaze Karlovic, Tim Wirtz, Jeff Bryan. Karlovic's in the Hall of Fame. There's a Hall of Famer there. Jason Dubel, all those guys that you practice against for 13, 14 weeks, and you're taking your lumps, right? You're getting beat up, and that makes you better. So we had the opportunity to practice against those guys, see what successful guys did, how they practiced, how they approached it, what their demeanor was, what their attitude was, and what success was like, right? So there, as you mentioned, there's a blueprint, there's an expectation. So success breeds success. And, you know, as a sophomore and you're just getting hammered every day, practice isn't always fun, you know, but by the end of the year, you figure it out, you know, you get a little better, you get better. And, you know, before you know it, it's enjoyable. And you hate to see it end. So that was definitely an advantage having, you know, 3 to 4 extra weeks of practice and getting into it. And I would say for that's for our sophomore class, every once in a while against those guys, you know, especially offensively, we'd pop something, right? We'd pop a play and we'd love it because then the coaches would go nuts on the first team D. And, but I think that gave us a sense of, hey, I think we got something. In our freshman year, we were unbelievable. I mean, we looking back as an adult and a former coach and kind of evaluating talent a little bit. I mean, we were really good. We were really good. So you knew coming in that you were really good against your class. You saw that against a great football team. You had some glimpses of success. And then, you know, going into our junior year, it's like, okay, your time's now. Now what? You know, and I think that, you know, going into that junior year, I remember our first official practice, Coach Walt Vrabel, who was a major influence for me. He called me out as one of the first DTs, defensive tackles, and you know, I just felt like I belonged, you know, at least with our group. Now, I didn't know how I was gonna match up against anybody else, but I felt like, you know, I can do this. So, you know, just leading into it, that was kind of how we started. And then do you want me to touch on how that season was and how that season went? That was a tough year. So, you know, we start really well. We beat Sharon. So first of all, that defense, I think, averaged giving up, I think, about 9 points a game. Right. That's all we gave up. We had a very good, and it was a different era, obviously, right? A different era of football. But we were a very good defense. And, you know, we ended up going 5-1. We beat Sharon, Erie McDowell, Akron East, which were the Orientals at the time. Lost to Warren Harding, and there's one more in there. I think we beat Glenville. So, you know, we were really doing well, and we played Sharon the funny story. The first week we played Sharon at YSU, and myself and another defensive tackle were starting, and we're going to circle back to Trap. They had a guy at tailback that all summer long, all they were talking about was this guy. Now, do you know the name Almarco Jackson?
Yes.
Yes. Brother of, I think it's Marlon Jackson, right? NFL? Okay. Right. So that's him. That's who we were playing. And was unbelievable, like unbelievable tailback. And so all we heard all year. But they also had a number of other guys. A guy by the name of Joe Stoner, who went to Pitt. So long story short, we play that game. And for me personally, I just vividly remember this. It's like the first series. They ran trap to the opposite D tackle. I almost made the play across the center's face. Almost got it, but didn't. and they pop it for a touchdown. Okay. So I didn't get trapped, but we come out the next series and that guy's gone and Brian Frasco's in. So it just kind of reiterated what I was talking about. Like, yeah, you better do your job. You know, you need to make sure that you're on point, because somebody will take it and we'll find somebody else. So, you know, we go 5-1. There was a lot of turmoil on that team. There was a lot of tough, especially when you're 5-1 and you're looking for one more win to maybe get into the playoffs at that point in time. We lose to Lancaster, who had a phenomenal player, Ben Gilbert, lineman, lose to Boardman, lose to Mooney. And we missed the playoffs. That's when they took 4 teams, and we missed the playoff by a 1/10 of a point. We were number 5. So that was a tough year. But I think, you know, there were moments where I felt like I'm playing pretty well. And, you know, I knew where I wasn't good. You know, I knew where I could be. I knew where I could make plays. And I had a position coach, Walt Vrabel, who was like, "Hey, you want to freelance stuff? That's okay. Just don't mess up." So, you know, I had a great coach in Walt Vrabel, who was a great player. Camel, went to Kent State, great player. Kent State, spent a little bit of time with the Philadelphia Eagles, and his son was one of my best friends on the team, but he was my position coach, and he was just a great motivator, great technician, knew the position, knew the game, and really really helped to develop, you know, all the defensive linemen and offensive linemen. But you know, his thing always was, you know, you can freelance, you can take a risk, but you better not be wrong. If you mess up, it's your fault, not mine. And so, you know, that was just it was really a great year personally, because of the success. You know, I felt like I really played well, and but I was really surprised. It was never on my radar that I was going to be named first team SVC. It never even occurred to me. Just never thought of it. Didn't think I wasn't. It was just never a factor in anything that I was thinking about. So it was a huge honor. You know, it was really a huge honor to receive that. You know, but now that I'm talking to you, I think that those SVC games, I played really well. You know, Fitch, I had a lot of tackles, had a sack at the end of the game. You know, Warren Harding, who won the SVC that year, they played well against them. You know, Boardman and Mooney. So, you know, and we just had a great defense. I mean, you named some of the names, right? Jabari Teague, you know, goes on to YSU and was just a great teammate, right? When we had him on here, you know, just a really good guy to be around, a team guy, and a great player. You know, we had on that defense. Well, at this point now, there's 3 Hall of Famers on there. So Brian Frasco, he's in the Hall of Fame. Was a defensive tackle, starter both ways. Matt Guarneri. You know, I guess you could say the same thing about Jabari Teague, right? Like from the things I think in that era, it's one of those things where there's not a lot of stats that if you weren't the tailback at Ursuline, you know, you're not getting as a wingback or receiver, you're not getting a lot of stats. it's the way it was. Similar to those guys over at Cheney, number 15.
Well, I'm glad that you say that, because sometimes I think when people hear that connotation, Hall of Famer, you know, people feel like you have to be an all world beater to have that tag put next to your name. But when you talk about work ethic, when you talk about holding your own and being out there leading other great guys or being influenced by other great guys and continuing the tradition and playing your hardest, preparing your hardest, uh, going out there and giving yourself a chance, win or lose, because nobody goes through life undefeated. You're going to have some wins some days, you're going to have some losses a lot of other days. So when you said earlier that you don't know what goes into making a Hall of Fame player, I can understand what you mean by that. But, when you look back in totality, what do you think it means to you to be selected and to be a Hall of Famer?
Well, so, let me say this. You said it earlier, right? We are our own worst critics. I think that's probably my biggest obstacle, but it's also probably my biggest strength, right? Meaning good is never good enough, and you're always looking for some way to get better. But you also have to recognize that and not beat yourself up too much. And I felt like when you said this earlier, when I was watching film as a player in a moment, I don't know, but then when I'm coaching football and I'm evaluating kids, and then if I go back and watch myself and not just myself, but those guys that I played with, we were problems, like I would take that, right? I would take that guy, so I think it took me a long time to appreciate some of the things that I did instead of being so critical over them. And then, what it means to me, that's difficult to say because, it is what it is. And I'm as a head football coach, as a principal, as a superintendent, you can't control the narrative, right? Like you're going to make decisions and you're going to perform. And sometimes people appreciate how you perform and sometimes people don't. But as long as I know that I did the best that I possibly could, that's all that I can do. And I know that I'm doing things from the right perspective, and I'm doing things for the betterment of the team, the organization. I mean, that is the best teammate that I can be and the best that I can do personally. I think what this means to me, though, currently, is that first of all, I'm very appreciative that I was thought enough about to be considered. And I also feel like I'm very appreciative that a group of people thought enough of me to, co-sign on this award. You don't always do things for the approval of others, but it is it does make you feel good when people do say, "Hey, good job." And I think that's what it means to me, because I see, I see when people get inducted, right, from the NFL to the MLB all the way down to high school, the conversation of, do they deserve it? Do they not deserve it? I should have been in 3 years before this person. All those conversations that happen, right? There's always opinions on it. But I feel very appreciative that this happened, that people felt like there was, and I say this, that, and I say that from a standpoint that even today, right, even through this, Ursuline has given me more than I could ever give back to them.
Usually it's us on the other end speaking with someone else. And, as we created this banner, One More Down, you actually get a chance to have one through this process. And then thinking about the ceremony and the chance to be recognized with some of those other great names that will be going in your class with you here in April. I'm sure you'll have time to think of your speech and your sentiments and the appreciation for the people that poured into you to getting you through and to this point. So as you think about the upcoming ceremony here in the middle of April, and you reflect back to what got you there, what is that one more down for moment for you now?
Yeah, it's funny. We do this every time, and I hadn't even thought about what it would be for me. I should have known this was coming, right? It's I think for me it would just be I don't even know if there's one more down that I would want to play, other than being able to be in that moment, walk in that locker room, and everybody who has ever played football knows what this means, and smell that smell in the locker room, right? And be around your guys that you come in with, that you have an opportunity to play with. The Sean Pennies, the Maguineris, Brian Frasco's, Don Menendez's, Mark Wolford, who, to be quite honest with you, if I'm in the Hall of Fame, he should probably be in the Hall of Fame. Another offensive lineman that played right next to, Felix Cataline, who just won a wrestling state championship down in Bishop Watterson. Congratulations to him. Just all those guys that you have the opportunity to fight with, compete with, and get in that huddle and squeeze a hand when it's tough. There's a bond that takes place with that. To be able to play for Coach Angle again, Walt Vrabel, Joe Nora, Bob Toth, those guys who really, they don't know it necessarily how they do it, but they leave a mark, right? And this is something my father taught me. When I got on SVC as a junior, he encouraged me to call my junior high coaches and thank them. And I just saw Joe Keneally working out last week, and I thanked him again. So when I got inducted in the Hall of Fame, I called a number of them and I thanked them, because it's true, right? It's not just, there's a lot of ups and downs, right? There's a lot of rocky roads. So, to be able to spend a moment with those guys and just appreciate what it meant and what we experienced, because I think at that point in time, that Steel Valley Conference was really something special. Even the guys you compete against, there is a connection. So I think that would just be my one more down. If it was legitimate one more down, I probably would not have went to try and scoop and score when I blew my knee. That would probably be the I wasn't gonna take it to the house from the 50, but that's life, and I'm here because of all the things that have happened. So that would be my one more down.
Just watching who you are as a person and getting to know you these past few years and seeing how your mind ticks and the things that pique your interest, I'm truly excited for you to get to experience this, because sometimes you toil in anonymity, being an offensive lineman, being a defensive tackle, those aren't limelight positions by nature. But for you to have put in the time, dedicated yourself to your craft, and made the most of it while you had the opportunity, I think it's certainly fitting that, you are tabbed as a chosen individual to be singled out and recognized and elevated to that status. And I'm sure, for your son, it's a moment of pride, to get to see that his dad is someone who others think of as a cut above, so hopefully when the ceremony comes, you'll be able to bask in it and enjoy all that it means. And you truly do deserve that honor, and I'm proud and happy that you get to experience that for yourself.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I think about how excited and honored my parents would be. I think my dad would really love it. Both my uncles who were involved in sports, Red, right? Pat, who ironically on a couple of those highlight films, was the narrator, and covered our games with Inside High School Football. So I think coming from a sports family, it means a little bit more, or it's another layer of enjoyment to it, right? So I do wish they were here to see that and really to enjoy it with me, not see it like, hey, look what you did, but really just appreciate it together and enjoy it. That is a little bittersweet, but I'm excited about it, and Ron, I appreciate you doing this, and we started this because we wanted to feature other people, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. So it's a little awkward doing it from this end, but it definitely gives me an opportunity to I just play with great people. I played with the one highlight you showed, against Fitch. I get the game-winning sack. Why do I get it? Because my best friend, defensive end, Larry Bryant, pulled him up. It's all a team. That's the only reason I got it. I just happened to be the one. So it's really a team effort, and I'm excited to hopefully see some of my teammates and see some of the alumni that I know and get to spend some time with them.